Hi, welcome to my first video ever on YouTube. My name is Aris Ardito Putra and I'm making this video as an assessment for my study. In this video, I'm going to talk about language variation based on the book An Introduction to Sociolinguistics by Ronald Wardhaugh and Janet M. Fuller, especially on chapter 7, Language Variation. The first part of this chapter will be discussed by me, and the other half of the chapter will be discussed by my partner Siti Mukaroma. I will put the link to her video in the description below. If you find my explanation to be misleading or maybe missing something, please let me know on the comment below. So let's get started. Before we start, I would like to inform you that this chapter is talking not only about the theory of language variation but also about the research related to it. The first thing that we are going to discuss is regional variation. How does it happen? Language differentiate internally as speakers distance themselves from one another over time and space. The changes result in creation of dialects of the languages. Over sufficient time, the resulting dialects might become a new language as speakers of the resulting varieties become unintelligible to one another. What are the examples of regional variation? We can take example of Latin. Latin spread around its area and over time it became English or Italian, also French in France. And another example will be in Indonesia. We have Javanese from Surakarta or Yogyakarta, and it spread into larger area, and now we have Semarang Javanese, Tegal Javanese, and Banyumas Javanese. This phenomenon created the concept of family tree. Dialect geographers have traditionally attempted to reproduce their findings on maps in what they call dialect atlases. What is dialect atlases? Dialect atlas is a map that shows how linguistic features are distributed in an area. In making a dialect atlas, a dialect geographer needs to use isogloss. What is isogloss? Isogloss is a line on a, for example, in English, for the word BATH, some people will pronounce it as. Is isogloss only about pronunciation? No. There are four kinds of isogloss, which are isolax. It is isogloss but related to lexical items. We have isomorph. It is isogloss but it is related to morphological features. Isophones related to phonological features, and isosim. It is related to semantic features. Quite often, when the boundaries for different linguistic features are mapped, the isoglosses show a considerable amount of crisscrossing. They cross each other. On occasion, there is a bundle of isoglosses. Such a bundle is often said to mark a dialect boundaries. Many times, dialect boundary coincide with geographical or political factor like mountain, river, or between country border, etc. When an area becomes the central area of a speech features, that area is called a focal area. In English language, for example, the focal area would be like London or New York. As in previous example, we also have Japanese, and the focal area for Japanese will be cities like Surakarta or Yogyakarta. Sometimes an area is not affected by any changes of linguistic feature from a focal area or from the surrounding area. And in that kind of situation, that place will maintain their own linguistic features. That kind of area is called a relic area. And the dialect in that relic area is called remnant dialect. After we learn some terms related to language variation, now we are going to discuss some items related to research in language variation and issues that might appear when we conduct it. First, we are talking about method in dialectology. One of the issues in this kind of research has to do with the sample, which is used for the research. When we take samples, the sampling method were based on assumption about who representative speakers of dialects were. Should it be a villager or a town resident or city residents? Our assumption about who will be our representative must align with the purpose of our research. The next problem related to the method is that there is a circularity in how social class was addressed. During the process of finding sample, we decide in what category, what class, and what status the subject will hold on. It will raise a question like, does that subject really belong to that group? Or does the subject agree to be labeled with that status or category? The next issue might be the issue involve basic idea about language. The data collection methodology often assume that a person does not have language variation in their speech. According to this way, when a person says a word in one way, he or she will not say it in another way. For example, when a person is talking about a drink, for example, a soda, maybe he or she will call that drink as soda. He or she will not say that item as pop. But we know that those two words, pop and soda, they refer to the same thing. Why is it a problem? We are going to discuss more about it later. The next part is about dialect mixture. What is dialect mixture? Dialect mixture is a variation in the use of language, in which individuals do speak one way on one occasion and other way on another occasion. For example, a Japanese who lives in Jakarta is speaking Indonesian affected by Jakarta dialect features when he is hanging out with his friends in Jakarta. And when he talks to his friends in Java, or maybe when he hangs out with his own family at home, he will speak in Indonesia but with Japanese dialect. There is also a term called free variation. What is free variation? Free variation is a variation with no social significance. For example, the word data, some people pronounce it as data, some other pronounce it as data, data, data. Another example will be the word economy. Some other will pronounce it as economic, economic, economy. After talking about method in dialectology, now we will jump into the next section, which is the linguistic variable. A linguistic variable is a linguistic item which has identifiable variants, which are the different forms which can be used in an environment. Let's say that we want to find out the relationship between social status and the way people pronounce words like fishing or singing. Some people will pronounce the word singing with singing, and fishing will become fishing. They will omit the sound. They will have this stop sound at the end of the words. So singing becomes singing, and fishing will become fishing. This sound omission is our linguistic variable. You can choose your linguistic variable as you like, depend on your research. It can be maybe the R-less pronunciation or maybe the R stressing variable. The next question is, does linguistic variable always have to do with pronunciation or the way people say something, or like phonological matter? As I mentioned earlier, you can take any linguistic variables for your research variable. The variable can be about variation in grammar, in intonation, or anything you are interested in. Phenomenon like he talks versus he talk, or he is happy versus he be happy, or maybe he happy can be your linguistic variable. Next, indicators. Next, indicators, markers, and stereotypes. An indicator is a linguistic variable to which little or no social import is attached. Some people in North America distinguish the vowel in cot and cow, while some do not. The difference is very difficult to notice for untrained observer. On the other hand, a marker can be quite noticeable. Like the previous example, singing and singing, or maybe tomato versus tomato. Or when Semarang people say piro, people from Brebes will say pira. They are quite noticeable even for the untrained researcher. Next, we have stereotype. A stereotype is popular and therefore conscious characterization of the speech of a particular group. I have some examples, but because they are related to the way how it pronounced in an area, maybe my pronunciation is not really correct. But for the sake of our learning, I'm going to say it. In New York, some people will pronounce the word bird as boy, boy. Instead of bird, it becomes boy, boy. Or maybe 33rd Street for 33rd Street. 33rd Street for 33rd Street. Or maybe when the North American, they say howdy. It also happens in Japanese. When people in Pati, Central Java, they will say something like Wesko, Gagigo. This go word is added at the end of some utterance. What is social variation? It is a variation in language due to social factors. Once we have identified the linguistic variable as our basic working tools, the next question is how linguistic variation relates to social variation. Once we have identified the linguistic variable as our basic working tool, the next question is how linguistic variation relates to social groups. Its linguistic features that we have correlate with membership in a particular social group. In order to answer these questions, what we have to do is collecting data concerning the variance of a linguistic variable, so we can draw conclusion about social distribution of this variance. When we draw conclusion, we must be able to relate this variance in some way to quantifiable factors in society. For example, social class membership, age, gender, ethnicity, and so on. We can have example like the use of artlessness in English and its relation with membership in a particular social group. The linguistic variable is artlessness. The social group or class membership is age, gender, ethnicity, etc. Is artlessness related to any social class member? If yes, to which one? Is it related to age or gender or ethnicity? When we talk about social class membership, we are talking about to what social class does a person belong to. And talking about social class membership, there are some difficulties we may encounter when we are dealing with social class membership. The first one is many societies that have no strict guidelines. Therefore, the term like middle class can have different meanings for the subjects of our research. The line that borders the middle and the lower class, or maybe the higher class, is not really clear and have different standard from one person to another. The social class system of a society in a place now is different than 50 years ago, or maybe in 5 years ago. Other than that, the social class system in Brazil, for example, is different with in Australia. Other than that, the social class in Brazil, for example, is different than in Australia. So we cannot say that a person who is in middle class in Australia is a middle class in Brazil. There are many other difficulties a researcher might have in the field. But now we are going to talk about the data collection and analysis. And my partner, Siti Mukaroma, will explain it to you. For my classmates, the link is in the group chat, and if you watch in YouTube, check the link in the description below. Thank you.